All right, so now we have our server running on port 3000. It should be able to listen to requests from clients, but it's actually going to save nothing because we haven't defined any route. And so this brings us to the concept of routing. I'll have to take you to the documentation right here. Getting started, basic routing. So basic routing. So routing refers to determining how an application responds to a client request to a particular endpoint. Okay, so we need to define endpoints of which clients can make a request to that endpoint, which is a URI or path and a specific HTTP request method. Each route can have one or more handler functions which are executed when the route is matched. Route definition takes the following structure: the app.method, then the path, then the handler. The app is an instance of Express. We already have our app right here. Then we have some kind of a method which is an HTTP request method. It has to be in lowercase. And then our path is a path on the server. Then our handler is the function executed when the route is matched. This handler can also be called a controller. Specify the app, which is an instance of our Express here. And then we have a method. We're going to use the get. We can pass in two arguments. The path, in our case, is going to be just the /path. We can pass in a handler function, which is a controller. So this is going to be an arrow function, which takes in a request object. It contains the request information from the client. This is the convention to just call it ret. Then we're going to have some response, which usually should be response, but call it res. We can then pass in those curly brackets like this. So this is an arrow function right here. We have to specify what to serve when user visits this path right here. Response.send. Let me say hello world right here. Now, if we visit this route here, we're supposed to get this message. If we make any changes, we need to stop and restart our server. Stop our server and restart it again. We should be able to see this text right here. If we visit this /route, this localhost 3000 is similar to the / route. It's going to be localhost port 3000 and then /. So in the browser, even if you omit the /, you can refresh right here. And sure enough, we have our hello world right here in the browser. We have defined our first route. You could give this route any other name. In our case, we could call this users /users. We made changes to this file, but we need to restart our server. So I'm going to stop, clear this, and I'm going to restart the server. Now, if we go back, go to /users. You can see now we are on users and we are getting a hello world. If we just go to the /, which is just home, nothing is there because we did not define any route here with /. It's /users. It's matching this path. So that is basic routing. I want to address the problem that we're having. Each time we make changes to our file, we need to restart our web server, which is something that is counterproductive. You want your server to auto restart if you make any changes. Okay. We have a package that can handle that for us. It's called nodemon. Okay, let me open a second terminal. Now I'm going to install nodemon. But nodemon is going to be a development dependency. So npm install -D for dev dependency. The package is called nodemon. So let me go ahead and install this. So if you go to your package.json, check it out, you can see under dev dependencies, now you have a new dependency called nodemon. And so we're going to use this to restart our server each time we make changes to it. You have to create a script for this right here. So I'm going to call it dev nodemon server.js like that. This is going to run nodemon on our server. Instead of running it like this, you can use npm run dev. Just like this script right here is called dev. If you code it dev start, you need to specify that here, dev start. So let me save this and run this. We can see now our file is being run using nodemon. Okay, so if I make any changes to this now, hello users, if I save this, you can see now this is restarting because of the changes that were made inside server.js. So nodemon is just watching this file right here. And if we make any changes, it's going to restart that. And so there's no need for us to be restarting our server manually. If we go back, refresh, you can see now it says hello users. If we make any changes, I am here. We should be able to see that here. If we refresh right here, you can see hello users, I'm here, and it's working perfectly fine. All right, so in a real world scenario, you don't want to expose your users like this, but for the purposes of this tutorial, we're going to have some users right here, and to mimic a database, because we don't have any database for now, but we assume that we're getting these users from a database, we're going to create a users variable right here, which is just an empty array like this. So instead of sending this, we can send in users right here. So if I'm to save this and go back and refresh, you can see now we have an empty array right here. We could put some users inside here. They have an email or a example.com, a password, tests 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Refresh right here. You can see we have our user right here, and I can duplicate this. Let me, and then Control V. Him at example.com, and they have an 1, 2, 3. Check this out. And if I use pretty print, you can see we are getting access to our users right here. Okay, so we've set our first route. We need our second route for authentication. We're going to create another route right here. We can say app.post in all lowercase. We need to provide a path register. We also have a handler function right here. It takes in the request and the response. So what usually happens is, let's say on the front end, we have a form like this. And inside the form, there are two fields, right? One here and another one here. You receive information on the front end. You're getting it from a form like this. And this is the email field, and this is the password field. So usually this is how we collect our information. And once we collect this information, we need access to these two fields right here, the email and the password. And the way we have access to that on our server is via this request object right here. It contains that information. We can destructure the information because it comes in a form of an object. We're going to have email and password, and we access that via this request object. On this request object, there's a body property on this request object, and that's where we're going to access all this information right here. Once we access this information right here, we can then register our user. If they're already registered, we need to inform them. You can handle that cache. But in this case, we are assuming that they are a new user and they are providing the details. I'm not going to be handling errors here, but of course, you should be able to check whether the email is available and the password is available, and validation. So I'm going to say const user, and then we create our user using their email. This email key, it has got a value, and then the password key has got a value. That's how we should register our users. And so here our email is going to be this email right here, because it's going to be a value that we get from the user. So I'm going to say email, and then here the password as well. The key is password, and the actual value is coming from this password right here. So password. If the key and the value are similar, you can remove the value and leave just the key like this. So this will give us this structure right here. Because our database is not an actual database, it's just an array. So we can push this user, users dot want to push this user that we have right here. And we need some kind of a feedback to the client so that they know whether their attempt to register was successful or not. We can return a response, and we can send a status code, status 200. And we can then send a JSON success user created. All right, so now that we are done with our endpoints, this one is to get our users, and this one is to register our users. And since this has to pass on data, we do not have a front end yet. And so we're going to use other tools that can send requests to our server. You can go to your extensions, look for REST client, go ahead and do the installation. You could use another tool called Postman. So this is Postman right here. You can go ahead and create endpoints. I'm going to be using REST client. And so what I can do inside our main project, we need to create a file. So I'm going to name it request. You can use either HTTP or REST. Once you have that created, then you can specify your endpoints right here. So you have to make sure you specify the HTTP method. The first one uses get, the second one uses post. And so we can start by using get in all uppercase like that. And then you specify the endpoint, which is HTTP. It's localhost :3000 and then /user. So let me send that request. And sure enough, you can see we have our users down here. To create another request, you need to separate these with 1, 2, 3 hashes. The other endpoint is a post request localhost to /register. This one, you have to send JSON data. To send JSON data, immediately after, you gotta say content type. Specify the content type is going to be application /JSON. You have to put a space between this content type and the object that you're trying to send. So it's going to be a JSON object with 2 fields. Make sure you provide these 2 fields right here, the email and the password. If it's JSON, both the key and the value are going to be in quotation marks. So it's going to be email setson@example.com, and the other one is a password test 1 2 3, like that. This is the data that we're going to send. If we try out this endpoint send request, you can see we are having an error, cannot destructure property email. This is because in our server we have to use middleware that can make sure our server can pass this data, right? For us to be able to pass JSON data, we're going to use our app.use the express.json. If we send our send request, you can see here it says success, user created. So we can send a get request now. We get all our users and see whether we have Setson in that database. If I send the first request, you can see down here, sure enough, we have our user down here, Setson. So we have 3 users now in our database. However, you can see there's one problem right here. Our passwords are being saved as plain text. So if somebody breaches into our database, then of course we are in big trouble, because he will get user information and passwords, and they'll be able to use those accounts or do whatever they want with these accounts. And so we don't want to save our password as plain text like this. We want to hash those passwords. And so the way we do that is we use a package called bcrypt to hash our passwords. And so open the second terminal, and then I'm going to run npm install bcrypt, and sure enough we have it. And so if I clear this and then go to our package.json, you should be able to see another dependency right here. We can now hash our password and then save it in our database. The way we do it is in our register endpoint. We can convert this password into a hashed password because bcrypt functions are asynchronous. So we have to make this function here async first, and then import bcrypt up here. A const bcrypt to require, in quotation marks, bcrypt. Good. And so down here, we have to generate a salt first, and then we hash the password. The reason why we generate a salt is because we might have similar passwords. If you don't salt them, then of course they will have the same hash. You want to generate what we call a salt. Await bcrypt. .gensalt, you pass in the cost of processing the data. By default, it's 10. The higher this number, the higher the cost of generating that. And so you want to keep it at 10 like that. Or you can just leave it empty because by default it's already 10. After you generate your salt, now you can say const hashed password await for bcrypt again. It has got a hash method, and then you can pass in the data that you want to hash. In this case, we want to hash this password, which is just plain text coming from the user. And so we can say password, and then we pass in the salt right here, this salt that we generated up here. Then we can use this hashed password in creating our user here. So you can say here hashed password right here. So the password field is going to be a hashed password. Email is going to be email. But if the key and the value are similar, you can omit one of those and just keep this like this. But the password now is different, right? It is called hashed password. So we want to use that. So if I save this and go back and test our endpoints. So let me send a request here and check out this password, whether it's going to be hashed or not. So send request, and it says success, user created. And if we go back to check our users here, and let's check out the password, you can see indeed it has been hashed. You can see now it's looking cryptic now. It's not plain text like this one right here. But of course, these ones cannot be changed because we have manually created these users right here, not programmatically. Okay, so we have this endpoint is working like we wanted it to work. Okay, so I'll end it here. In our next tutorial, we're going to create another endpoint for logging in our users. In that way, we're going to authenticate them and then authorize them to our resources on the back end. Okay, so I want to thank you for your time. Hope to see you in my next tutorial. For now, I'm out. Cheers.